Hey folks, welcome to my channel where I'm sharing real founder stories and advice for how to survive building a company. It's such an emotional journey. I'm actually here in Hawaii, recovering from building my own VC-backed company where I raised $40 million, grew to 300 employees, multiple cities, did several rounds of layoffs, and then sold the company. Now, why am I sharing this? It's because I get a lot of starting entrepreneurs who ask me, what do I wish that I knew when I started my company? Honestly, we could talk about strategy, we could talk about tactics, but I think what's even more important is talking about emotionally the mindsets that you need to survive building a company so you can get going with the things that you want to build. The first lesson, do not merge your identity with the company. This is super tricky, but for me, when I was building Choose, my happiness line was the same as my revenue line. And this is super dangerous, especially in the early days of building a company, because your revenue line goes all over the place. I found this really hard in the periods when I was single or as a solo founder. Luckily for me, I had a co-founder, but for many entrepreneurs that I work with, they're founding the companies alone. And in the beginning, I was alone. And so it's really important here, because we're so goal-driven as entrepreneurs, that you don't always equate the outcome with your happiness. The big action tip from me, and what I did that helped me a lot, was I went and I got therapy. I also had a coach. Those things helped give me the space to be able to talk about things like worthiness and make sure that I could find worthiness outside of my company. Lesson number 2, no one is crushing it. This is from my coach, Jerry Colonna, and I love this one because it is so easy to compare your insides to everybody else's outsides. I mean, there was a period where Choose was raising money, I was going out and speaking at conferences, I had articles out in Forbes, everything felt so sexy and glamorous, right? But at the same time, personally, I was struggling. That was around the time that I woke up one morning and my grandmother passed away and my fiance, a month before the wedding, left. Stuff is going on for founders. Seriously, I've spoken to hundreds of founders, and behind closed doors, there's always something going on. So if you are an entrepreneur and you're sitting there and you're thinking, I don't feel like I'm crushing it, why is everybody else doing great and I'm sitting here and I suck? That is a completely normal experience. And so I would encourage you, don't let it get you down if you feel like others are crushing it. No one's crushing it. Lesson number 3, fundraising is one of the most psychologically damaging things that you will do if you are founding a venture-backed company. So looking back at Choose, I spent 2/3 of my time fundraising, prepping for it, in the middle of it, or wrapping it up. I wish I had known early on that I was only gonna get to spend 1/3 of my time operating the company, because that's really 2/3 of my time honing in on a very specific skill set of pitching and reviewing legal documents and preparing to argue with investors. It's just a very specific skill set that you need to know about if you're gonna raise venture capital. Here's the other thing. I pitched 300 investors and got rejected over 250 times. Brutal, right? Think about dating rejections and 10x that when you're dealing with investors. Because you've got customers, you've got employees, you've got the media, and they're all watching you and waiting to see if you're going to raise or not. So founders really helped me through this because they normalized it. But if you're sitting there and you're 6 months into a fundraise and you've received $0, that's how it was for me. My first 2 seed raises were 11 months long, and I didn't raise money for the first 6 months. Like, that is extremely demoralizing. Lesson number 4 is that this is a lonely journey. There were so many long nights that I spent as founder and CEO of Choose, just thinking about business strategy and competition and just overall feeling really alone in all of these decisions that were on my shoulders. So when we were early on at Choose, we joined this startup accelerator program called 500 Startups. And I moved from Los Angeles to San Francisco to join the program. So I had just graduated from college. I had no network up in San Francisco. I was moving cities. And 500 helped me because I was able to call up 17 founders within the first couple weeks and just ask them for advice. And I will tell you that to this day, some of those founders are some of my closest friends. So my recommendation here and my action tip is go and start a founder community. I've got a group of amazing women, female founders that we call ourselves the Feministas, and we have a WhatsApp group, and we have real talk with each other. And I can't tell you how much those founders have helped me think through strategy and hiring and firing and layoffs and raising money and selling my company. And it will totally save your mental health to have that community around you. Okay, lesson number 5, for surviving building your company. Burnout is totally real. I spent the first 6 years working weekends and a long period of time not dating because everything was completely focused in on my company. I just didn't have a life. I was resenting the company for eating up my 20s because I started the company when I was 19 and I sold it at 30. It was my 20s. And I saw a bunch of my friends, they were going out, they were dating, they were having boozy brunches on Sundays, and I was sitting inside working. And when I started to resent the company, I lost motivation and I lost fuel. And really it turned around for me when I had a conversation with my dad and he was like, go live your life. And I started to date and I started to be a little bit more normal. So my action tip for you here is find one thing, one hobby, something outside running the business that you can calendar and put it in your calendar during your work hours. I know this sounds crazy. I am a surfer. And so what I did was every Friday morning, I had a big old fat slot that said surfing. And I would book that for surfing and people knew it. And instead of it being taboo, it became a story of, well, Tracy is doing the thing that she loves that replenishes her, and that's her time. So I think it's critical that you find that point where you have your own life outside of work and make it a hard commitment to yourself by putting it in a calendar so you don't burn out and you can get on with building what you have to build and also enjoying your life. All right, everyone, those are my 5 tips for how to survive building your company. The 5 things that I wish I knew when I was starting my company. So if you liked it, please hit that like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment below. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to hear more about. You know, starting a company, working at a startup, this is really hard, and I don't think that you should ever feel alone, and that's why I started this channel. So thanks a ton.